Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing our final grand review of the G1 Climax 33. We're going to do the best and worst block, the top 5 losers, the top 5 matches, and the top 5 winners to close it out. While it wasn't always perfect when it comes to G1 33, there's still plenty of amazing things we can touch on. And before we get started, leave a like on this video, subscribe down below. I upload all kinds of wrestling content, and yeah, let's just jump right into it. As you can tell on the side here, we already have it pulled up. The best and worst block is what we're going to start with, and we're not going to spend too much time on it because I thought it was a pretty easy choice to make. For best, I'm going to go with A block. It was stacked to the brim full of young guys who really wanted to prove themselves and put on a show, and they absolutely did just that. They proved that they are them. Kaido, Shota, Gabe, Tsuji, all in contention for my G1 top 5. Sonata and Ren both had their moments throughout the tournament. Hikuleo seems to be getting better, and Chase Owens was shit, but we can ignore one guy, you know? Pretty simple. It was the most anticipated block night for me. It was always the most exciting and always seemed to deliver at least one amazing match. But for the worst block, this wasn't too hard, but it was a little bit tough because none of these blocks are necessarily like all bad. Every one of these blocks obviously has their stinkers, but for the worst block, I'm going to go with block D. The whole thing was just filled with pretty middling matches, and if Zack Sabre Jr. wasn't in this block, it would have been pretty rough. Cobb and Naito were quite good at times, but all the rest seemed to be pretty consistently mid or maybe a step above that, and we compare that to the other blocks, I think this one stands out as the least interesting to me. But again, no block was necessarily all bad. I don't think that's really possible, but D block did just feel a little bit useless at times. But let's move on, and we're going to talk about the top 5 losers coming out of the G133. And yes, I did forget to update the little text on the side, but fuck it, we're just going to go right into it. The losers of G133. I'm not calling these guys losers, but per se, I don't think they are. I think they're just guys who, like, their perception has drastically decreased coming out of the G1 from where it was when it was going in. Maybe they just didn't reach the expectations that were set for them. Maybe they just look bad physically. There's like a number of reasons that they could have to be on this list, and we're going to go through them one by one, starting with number 5, Ren Narita. Ren had some absolutely amazing matches against Shota, Kid, and Kiyomiya for sure, but even in those matches, it was pretty obvious to everybody that was watching that this guy still has a lot of work to do when it comes to catching up with his fellow Musketeers. Tsuji and Shota both stood out in their own unique ways, but Ren just kind of didn't. He was pretty good in ring aside from his matches being a tad bit formulaic, like format-wise, but when it comes to character work, he just didn't look good at all. He tries his best to be this violent Shibata-style wrestler, you know, the son of strong style, but he's just not aggressive or powerful enough to make it all work, so it just kind of comes across as a bit try-hard. There is a reason he's a Musketeer. He showed himself in many of these matches throughout the G1, so that's why I'm saying he's not all bad, but I'm just kind of saying that, like, after the G1, I think it's clear to almost everybody that he's a step behind his young Musketeers, and so that for that reason, he's going to slot into number 5. Slotting into the number 4 spot is the IWGP champion Sonata, and I just have a quick question to ask you guys, just to kind of think of on your own. Coming out of the G1, does Sonata look like a stronger or better champion than he did when he came in? I'd kind of make the argument that it's pretty clearly no. I think he's very boring and just very bland, and that came across really hard in all of his matches, and he only really stepped his game up when he was pressed by a young guy to force him to, like the Kaido match in particular. That was excellent. But outside of some really good like standout moments, and I thought he had a very solid match record, he just kind of seemed like a guy, and it's just not good at all when you're the champion of the entire company. Like, the crowd isn't going to be anti-Sonata by any means, but they're not going to cheer for him unless he goes around like asking them to, you know, with the ear thing and, you know, kind of begging them to chant for him. His final G133 match against Evil really left a sour taste in my mouth. I know he was working with that torn bicep, so I am going to cut him a little bit of slack, like match quality wise, but even then he came across as just the most boring guy in the world. At bare minimum, Evil is always going to get the crowd to work against him and really root for his opponent, but in this match, they just didn't. I don't know what it was, like Evil wasn't really working very hard. Sonata, I felt like that bicep must have just fucked him up bad. But like, he wasn't doing a good enough job of selling to even make them like root for him. They were just dead silent. That's just not a good look. Simply put, the reason why I slotted Sonata in the number 4 slot is he just didn't come across as a champion in this G1. And when you're leaving the G1 as the guy everyone knows is going to get beat at Wrestle Kingdom, and maybe even before that against Evil of all people, it's just not a good look, and you're easily going to get a spot on this list for me. Post WWE, injury-riddled Kenta is going to get a spot at number 3 here. His body's just too broken down, and it made for a pretty bad G1 run from him. He turned back the clock against Ospreay and had a really good match, but outside of that, he just looked slow and uninspired, and I honestly can't even really blame him for it. The whole run just kind of left you bored for the future of Kenta. Like, his body is just too fucked, and it was pretty noticeable during the matches just how fucked it all was. And I'm sure you can find something interesting for him to do. I think the tag team he's got going on right now could be cool for the tag league, but like, I don't know. This whole G1 run just left me pretty sour about Kenta, just physically. I think the big question that the Chase Owens G1 run has me asking is, why was he here? I truly don't think that there's a good reason for him to be here over some of the people left out of this G1. He added absolutely nothing to his block, or any of his matches for that matter. The guy's out of shape. He's only really good for taking pins and probably tag, I guess, but it just showed how lazy he was in all of his work throughout this G1. It just really felt like Chase was dedicated to just coasting and collecting a check from New Japan on his way out the door. Honestly, I can respect that, I guess. But I mean, come on, man. Like, there was nothing more boring than a Chase Owens match where he had control for most of it, because you know there'd be very little movement, just the whole thing would just be very bland, and one of the young guys would actually have to sell for this guy. I still just can't believe there wasn't an outsider or someone like Tom Lawler in his spot. It's just really absurd to me, and I think you guys get the point on why he's number 2. He just doesn't belong in this spot. Was this G133 run entirely Tungaloa's fault? Maybe. But I do know that this entire run shouldn't have been used to get this man back into ring shape after so much time away. He wasn't ready for this G1 physically, and that was as clear as day from the first match. He was slow and just couldn't really do much of anything. The best way I can explain his number 1 placement on the losers list is the clip of the strikes he gave Okada. That shit was absolutely embarrassing, and that just kind of sums up everything for him this G1. Embarrassing. And honestly, I wouldn't be hurt if I never saw another singles match from him again. This 7-match run from Tonga is just one of the all-time great G1 stinker runs, but can I really blame him? I don't know, but it was bad, and so he gets the number 1 spot for me. Moving on to top 5 matches of the G133, this is always a tough thing to rank, but I think I got my list down to a T, and I want to give a quick honorable mention to any combination of Narita, Tsuji, Umino, Kid, and Kaito, because a lot of those matches were absolute peak, and this actually works because we're going to start with one of those matches. Gabe Kidd versus Yota Tsuji from Night 13 of the G1. This match is exactly the kind of match that I'm talking about when I go on and on about A-Block being the best. This shit got me fucking amped watching it. The fake out with the Tsuji doppelganger was absolutely hilarious and one of the best moments of the G1, honestly, and the match itself was hard-hitting, forceful, and felt full of emotion. Gabe is the absolute best at getting the crowd to hate him. Tsuji's natural charisma did wonders playing off of that. It was so easy for him, and it was so easy for these two to get the fans so loudly into it. This was just a perfect closeout to each of these guys' G1 runs, and it left me with such a positive feeling about both guys being main event level talents, and that's why it's number 5 over a lot of these other great pairings of those matches that I mentioned before. This one was just next level. Kazuchika Okada versus Zack Sabre Jr. was the absolute best of the quarterfinal round matches. Both of these guys put on an absolute show with this fierce, tense exchange. Such a simple and amazing story in this match, with Zack Sabre Jr. not being prepared for this new asshole Okada and it kind of catching him off guards, with moments sprinkled throughout the match where he could catch Okada being just too arrogant and he could get him into one of those nasty ass submissions. That late match energy shift was what took this match to the absolute next level, with those chop and slap exchanges that made you feel the desire that both of these guys had to win, while also recognizing how good that the other guy was and how much it would take for them to win overall. While the story of this match was simple, I thought it was an absolute masterclass in storytelling and in-ring psychology. This was a top-tier match with two incredible workers worthy of a quarterfinal round slot, and that's why it goes in number 4 of this list. The only thing that changed about that image there on the top is that Naito came into it, because the Rainmaker is back again, this time for a grand final match that truly felt like a grand final match. I mean, before the bell even rang, you could just feel the history that these two shared, and you knew that it would be an instant classic, and that's exactly what it was to me. Naito, similar to a match we're going to talk about very shortly, has a way of turning back the clock for these huge matches, and that's exactly what he did. The match itself was spectacular. It was a war, but it wasn't defined by any like huge spots, but more by the emotion that it made you feel. You can't talk about this match without talking about the crowd because they were so behind Naito, it was fucking silly. Every time any Okada supporters would make noise, the Naito supporters would drown them out almost immediately, and that just turned the excitement levels up a notch by like not even just one notch, like multiple notches. The crowd was just terrified that Okada would spoil their guy's night, and that's truly why the structure of this match worked to perfection and made the drama of it all just insane. A match worthy of the G1 final, and a match worthy of being on this list for sure. This was an instant classic, like I said, from two legendary wrestlers. You want to talk about instant classics, you got to talk about Kingston versus Ishii from Night 8. This match was an absolute war between two veterans of the game that had just so much respect for one another, their bodies wouldn't let them give up. There's hard-hitting matches, but then there's this kind of hard-hitting match where they were just putting their absolute all into everything that they did. This match absolutely flew by when I was watching it because it was just non-stop. Chop exchanges, suplex, the near falls at the end of the match with both guys just nearly kicking out. It felt like a fucking epic. Just like the last match, I can't talk about this match without talking about the crowd that were the loudest they had been up to this point in the G1 for these two beasts. Eddie and Ishii are just so good at showing their toughness and their heart through their in-ring work, and it's why the crowd got so loud into this. It was excellent. This match just felt otherworldly, and up until the very end of the G1, it was my match of the G1 pretty easily, because this is the kind of wrestling that will always work for me. It just gets me so hyped, and also, I love Eddie Kingston. This was awesome. I think plenty of people, as we've gone down this list and this match didn't appear, kind of expected where it was going to be, and no surprise, it's my match of the G1 pretty easily. I'm not going to be different and try to tell you that this wasn't the best match because, like I said, it so clearly was, and I knew it as soon as it ended. There were some incredible moments I think people are going to remember every time they think of the G133. My favorite being that smooth Naito DDT counter that just looked awesome. You couldn't help but get fucking hyped when you saw it. Something you may notice as well is how much I value crowds and their energy for each of my match ratings, and this crowd was exactly what I wanted for this level of match. They were just so incredibly loud for their guy Naito, even more so than the match against Okada, to be honest, and I think you might have been able to hear them from like a mile away. Naito and Ospreay just took advantage of these poor people and preyed on their desire to see their hero win, and while unintentionally, I think the closing stretch of this match did the best job of that. I know Naito got legit rocked after that kick from Will, which is scary, but Will did an absolutely incredible job of making it seem like a work, and it was just something that could have so easily derailed this match, but it somehow made it better to me, and that's just a testament to how good Will is. This is the kind of match that people are going to talk about for ages, and it slots itself pretty easily into the match of the G1 for me. We went through the top 5 losers at the start of the video, and now we're going to go through the top 5 winners of the G1, which were actually really hard, probably the hardest thing for me to put together because of how good so many people were. Guys who I thought were deserving of making the list but just kind of didn't are going to get an honorable mention from me right here, and those guys are Kazuchika Okada, Eddie Kingston, El Phantasmo, and Yota Tsuji. Lots of dudes I have to mention because I think people are going to get mad at me if I don't mention like Okada, but he was on the cusp of making this list, so was a lot of the guys in the G1. There were so many great talents, but we're just going to jump right in with number 5, Shota Umino. Shota is a guy who proved himself to me as the best musketeer in my opinion, and one of the most exciting young wrestlers in this generation. The way he just connected with every fan in every arena of this tournament just felt on a different level from everyone else. They would just get so excited to see him burst through the doors and come out to greet them. And you just can't forget about the work in the ring, which was so top level, especially when he was the underdog babyface that the crowd could get behind. I think this G1, Shota showed the traits in a main event wrestler that you just simply can't teach, and with more time to develop, he's absolutely going to get to that level one day, and when he's at the top, I think he's going to be there for a long time. He stood out to me this G1, and so that's why he's going to be at number 5 on this list. Doubters are in the absolute mud when it comes to Kaito Kiyomiya, who showed that he can hang with absolutely anyone at any level, working any style you can think of. Do you need the dude to play the underdog against a guy the size of Hikuleo? He's got you. You need him to go to absolute war with someone like Kid? That's light work. I really wanted to see that Okada rematch in the playoffs, or even just any playoff match with no time limit, But even though we didn't get that, I think he has an incredible 7-match run to look back on in my eyes. Kaido showed up in the big matches and was match of the night pretty consistently, and if I was Noah, I would do everything in my power to lock his ass down, because with a showing like this in the G1, I feel like New Japan is going to offer this kid the bag. But yeah, Kaido just proved all the doubters wrong. He showed up in every moment they asked him to show up in, and for that reason, he's got to be at number 4 for me. At number 3, we're going with Zack Sabre Jr., who, if anything, cemented himself as one of the best technical wrestlers of all time, and maybe one of the best wrestlers in the world today with his performance in this G1. The way he elevated every single one of his block matches to be better than average, if not better than that, with ease, was something else. Like, the guy's just so talented, and his style works with absolutely anyone. The submissions that he can bust out with such speed and fluidity just make his matches so full of drama, and I'm just amazed every time I see him, like, flip around to put some guy in, like, some kind of arm hold, or transition into some, like, octopus level movement with his body. It's crazy. The ball has definitely gotten rolling with singles Zack Sabre Jr. with the TV title, but after that, I want to give him a run with an even higher level of belt because he deserves it after what he's done this G1. Like I said at the beginning, this guy might just be one of the best wrestlers in the world, and when you put on such consistently good matches, I think you're right at number 3. I think this is the perfect spot for him. Gabe Kidd. This G1 was the absolute perfect opportunity for him to show off this great character of his, a psychotic, crazy fucker who just can't stay still and always wants to fight, and it just made every single one of his matches must-watches. His aggression stands out among everyone else's as organic, and unlike so many guys before him, when he says, "I'm a killer," you honestly believe it. I mentioned it before with his match against Yota Tsuji, but he just has this ability to get the crowd so anti-Gabe Kidd by just working in the ring, and that's just something you cannot teach. The way he would just build like a mini rivalry in every single one of his matches, it felt like the guy he was facing against and him have been feuding for years, and this was especially noticeable in the double countout versus Kaido, which is the kind of match that sets up a lifelong, like, career-defining rivalry between the two guys. He gave every match he was in, and even the backstage promos after the matches, his absolute 100%, which is something that I pray he continues to do. Because when Gabe Kidd does, like, turn it up to 100%, his personality is just so different from everybody else. I know not everybody likes this, like, psychotic, crazy guy who's always yelling, but I think it's amazing. The G133 made one thing very clear to me when it comes to Gabe Kidd, and it's that sky's the limit. If he keeps on improving and stays consistent and stays dedicated and motivated, he could absolutely be the top Gaijin heel for many, many years. This whole thing was just incredible for the kid, and for many, he'll be the MVP of the G1, and for me, he absolutely was. But just like the match of the tournament, some little British fucker had to steal it from him. Who else, man? I think that it would be very difficult for anyone to argue against Will Ospreay as the G1 Climax 33 MVP, because he delivered one of the greatest runs in G1 history, in my opinion. I mean, you could absolutely argue that he gave every single one of his opponents their best or second best match in the G1, and I'm going to argue that opinion. Just very good work against Taichi, Okan, Kenta, and Loa. Kenta and Loa being like, how did he do that? Amazing stuff against Yoshi, Okada, and El Phantasmo, and Finlay in the quarters, and then he capped it all off with another match of the year contender versus Naito in the semis. I mean, what? The way that Will Ospreay can work any style of match and just excel at it is incredible, and for me personally, I'm walking away from this G1 thinking that there's nobody better in the world right now than him. This guy is an absolute once-in-a-lifetime talent. You're never going to see another Billy Goat. You never have seen a Billy Goat, because he's just different in every single way than all of his contemporaries. You simply cannot dispute the fact that the crowd absolutely loves him. They're so lifted, they're so elevated, if you will, for all of his matches, and he gets them alive every single time just by working in the ring. He doesn't even have to do his high-flying spots, and he gets them going, and because of all of this, I absolutely will be making the case for him to win the G1 next year. And I honestly hope more people do the same, because I think if there's any time to push Will at the pinnacle, the top of the card, it's right now. Like I said, Ospreay is the best in the world right now, and everything that he does is just can't miss, incredible work. I'm definitely going to watch his Rev Pro match versus Shingo coming up, and for all of these reasons, he's my personal G1 Climax 33 MVP. We're going to have everything that I've talked about in this G1 review up on the side here, and that's going to be it for the G1 Climax 33. I want to mention one final time how grateful I am for everyone who's tuned into these videos, left a like, interacted in any way on socials. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope you guys stick around for the future because there's going to be a lot to come. I love making content about wrestling. I loved making content about the New Japan Pro Wrestling just vibe. It was so fun getting to know it all and getting to know everyone and the style. I won't regret it for a second, even though I did watch 119 singles matches overall. I don't regret it for a second. With that being said, please leave a like on this video, subscribe down below, leave a comment, and for the final time, happy G1. Till next year, I'll be right back here talking about G1 Climax 34. Thank you guys for watching, and have a good one, y'all. Peace.